Hello, my name's Camber Driscoll and I'm calling from Alpharetta, Georgia. And today I'm excited to get to ask you what, when you're walking around UVA Law's campus, makes you most grateful to get to be there and call it home. Thank you so much.
This is Admissible. I'm Natalie Blazer, Dean of Admissions at UVA Law. The Thanksgiving holiday is coming up here in the U.S., and that means two things. First, this is always a wildly popular time of year for folks out there to be submitting their law school applications. I know the LSAT, the November LSAT is going to be coming out, I think, the day before Thanksgiving this year. So we're expecting a lot of people to be working on their applications over the holiday. But also, I'm also reflecting on the many things that I personally am thankful for. And you, everyone out there listening right now, you are very high on that list. So in an effort to help people out there who are working on their applications in the next few weeks, and also to thank you for listening to this show, I thought I would do a sort of Ask Me Anything style podcast today and get all of your questions answered. So what we did, most of you will know, we put a call out via email and also on the Admissible Podcast Instagram page to submit your questions to us, either in a voice memo or just in a written email. Also, last week at our weekly Q&A on Friday, we had such a great group. It was a lot of people. We went over the hour and I had to get to another meeting. So I actually asked the people in attendance if they wouldn't mind submitting a few of their questions that we didn't get to that I could answer on the show. So we have a lot of questions from a lot of different places, and hopefully we'll get them answered today. In addition, I have a very special guest here to help me out, one of our amazing student workers, Chelsea McKelvey. Because the vast majority of questions ultimately at the end of the day were submitted in written form, we did get one voice memo, as you heard at the top of the show. Most people decided to write them in, which is great and fine. And so I asked the lovely Chelsea to come and read them so that you're not just hearing my voice drone on the entire time. But as a major bonus, because Chelsea sits at the admissions desk twice a week and answers the phone and talks to visitors all the time, I also want to hear from Chelsea what the most commonly asked questions are in the admissions office. So we are doing a lot today. We have a lot to cover. Welcome to the show, Chelsea.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what do you do at UVA, anything you want to share.
So I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, and then after undergrad at Furman University, I moved to Washington, D.C. and worked and lived there for about 4.5 years. I worked in a number of nonprofit roles, which I really enjoyed and I think prepared me well for law school. And at UVA, I'm really involved with the Black Law Students Association, BLSA, and of course, admissions, getting to sit at the front desk and hang out with my admissions friends all day long.
Which we love. We have a small army of student workers, and they make life just so much more interesting and fun and helpful in our office. So we're really grateful for you all. So we usually do a little icebreaker at the top of the show. And given that we're kind of on this Thanksgiving theme, what are you doing for the holiday?
I'll be visiting Kansas City with my partner. I'm really excited. I've never been to Kansas City before.
Exciting.
Yeah, so I think it'd be nice to explore a new city and eat some really, really good food.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds so fun. Okay. So, like I said, we have a lot of questions to dive into. I'm so glad you're here, Chelsea, to help me out. Do you want to go ahead and read the first question that came in? We got this one in an email.
Yes. This question asks, will the admissions committee hold applications for review if they see a future LSAT date on file? I am scheduled to take the November LSAT. Would the admissions committee prefer the application to be submitted after the November LSAT score is on file?
This is a great question. And as I mentioned sort of in the intro, yes, the November LSAT will be coming out later this month. We get this question a lot about timing, and hopefully my answer here will help a lot of people because this actually came up multiple times, not only at the Q&A last week, but also in the inbox. So here's the deal. If you already have a valid LSAT score on file and you don't tell us that you're taking the test again, even if it's somewhere in your LSAC account that you're registered, we're going to go ahead and complete your file and we're going to start our review. So if you don't want us to start reviewing until that future score comes in, you have to send us an email asking us to hold off on reviewing until your future score comes in. I think it's best if you submit your application once you have your new score. If you're going to ask us to hold off on reviewing until your new score is there anyway, you're not really saving time, if that makes sense. So I know that people are very concerned with getting their application in early, but submitting all of the other materials, if you're telling us to hold off, you're not really gaining any time by submitting it early. The most important thing is to submit your application when it's as strong as you think it can be. And if you think, I assume if you're registered for a future LSAT, you think that your score is going to go up and improve your candidacy. So I always tell people it's just best to wait until you have that score. Just remember, too, that if you're submitting your application and you don't know a major component of your application, such as a future LSAT score, you haven't taken it yet. You don't know what your score is going to do, if it's going to go up, if it's going to go down, if it's going to stay the same. You don't know if something crazy is going to happen on the administration date. So you might find yourself in a position where you want to address something about that future score. So then you're kind of creating an additional point of contact. So you're submitting the hold request. Then you're submitting maybe an addenda. And do you see how you could just do it all in one cohesive application if you wait until you have your score? So it's 2 additional emails for us to reply to. It's 2 additional emails for you to write. Again, assuming that you want to address something with that score. Just me personally, I would want to know everything that's in my application package before I hit submit. So you're not going to save that much time. A strong application in January is always going to be better than a weaker application in October. I tell people this all the time. Does that make sense, Chelsea, the way I said it? Were you in this position at all?
I think that makes perfect sense. I believe I just applied with my 1 score in around October, but I think the way you've explained it and set it out makes good sense, and it just kind of lifts some of the administrative load for the student and the admin team.
Great. Okay, so let's take a question that we got because the in-person Q&A went overtime last week.
This question asks, what do you wish applicants did more of?
It's really what I wish applicants did less of, and that is something I've said on the show before, but it's preparing way too much for the interview. And by that, I mean anticipating what you think we're going to ask and only preparing those responses. This has really gotten out of hand. You don't need to prepare for certain questions. And particularly if you are just preparing answers to questions that you don't even know if we're going to ask yet, it can really throw people off, and it has thrown people off. And it has resulted in some not great outcomes for those people. So yes, of course, you should know why you want to go to law school. You should know why you're interested in UVA. You should have your own questions prepared. But otherwise, be yourself. It's a conversation. I really wish people would not try so hard to anticipate what we're going to ask. Have your key points in mind, but this interview is about you. It's about you as a person. It really shouldn't be that complicated. And so I wish people would not try so hard to anticipate, because we are changing it up. We're changing it up because people are having these rehearsed responses. That's not helping us get to know you, and that's not helping us connect with you. And it's not really putting yourself in a great position when you're going to come to law school and need to think on your feet, answer cold calls, have a lot of spontaneous conversations. This is just a little preview. So I do appreciate that question. Okay, the next one came into our inbox. Chelsea?
Is there a preferred page limit for the resume? I have a 2-page resume, but a longer 3-pager resume that illustrates all my scholarships, honors, competitions, one section, which is otherwise summarized at the high level for my 2-pager.
I'll keep this one short and sweet. We prefer a 2-page resume. So please feel free to give us that high-level summary of all of your awards, everything else in the 2-page version. So while we're on resumes, though, we did receive a more specific question in the inbox about that. Chelsea?
I'm a prospective applicant, and I have a quick question about my resume for my law school application. I graduated undergrad in 2013, and as I craft my resume, I'm finding that just the quantity of jobs between starting undergrad in 2011 and into the present is taking up more space than typically acceptable on a resume, while leaving little room for adequate description. I'm wondering how to resolve this in a way that makes it as easy as possible for your admissions department to see the whole picture. I don't want to waste your time by including potentially repetitive service industry jobs, but leaving them out would leave a gap in my resume. Is there a way that you prefer non-traditional applicants to resolve this? Do you prefer an unabridged reaccounting of my employment history or more of a highlight reel? Any guidance would be very helpful.
I love this question, and we do get questions from sort of non-traditional applicants about what is relevant, what do you want to see? We don't want to see gaps, but we don't need to know everything either. So I'll point out here that we included a new section in the application last year under experience and interests. Applicants have probably noticed this. That section says, we understand that professional resumes do not necessarily reflect every major responsibility or position a candidate has ever held. We invite you to further expand upon your work history, familial obligations, or other significant contributions to your household, including part-time jobs or roles assumed while attending high school and or college. This is an optional question, but I think the person who wrote into us to ask this question, this is a great use of that section of the application, right? So he mentioned service industry jobs. He mentioned jobs that are now like over a decade ago. I think that putting some of that in the experience and interest section is going to be very helpful to us because it's going to show us, hey, this person worked during undergrad. Hey, this person has various service industry jobs, which we do care about, by the way. It's going to avoid having gaps in the resume, but it's also not going to take away from what I would think are the more current, recent, relevant work experience that person would have to highlight. So great question. Okay, so now we have another one that came in to our email inbox, but it's actually one I have heard, I think, at every single in-person Q&A I've done this fall, whether here at the law school on Fridays or when I've been recruiting on the road. So I'm excited to set the record straight. Chelsea, can you read that one?
Yes. This question asks, I wanted to ask a clarification question on the Why UVA prompt in the application. As you know, the prompt is pretty specific in asking applicants to discuss a personal experience with UVA that prepares them for contributing to the school. Would you recommend against answering this question if I am an out-of-state student who has never had the opportunity to visit UVA but has a strong interest in attending? In other words, would you recommend against treating this question as a typical YX question?
Okay, I'm excited to dive into this. Just for the sake of the record, our Why UVA Law, our optional Why UVA Law prompt reads as follows. If you'd like to share how a personal experience with UVA has prepared you to contribute to the law school, you are welcome to include that information here. Such experiences might include, but are not limited to, being a child of someone who graduated from or works for UVA, being a descendant of ancestors who labored at UVA, participating in other UVA programs, and or having a specific tie to the Charlottesville area. Please note this question is optional and should only be answered if these topics are not already addressed elsewhere in your application. Okay, so the wording of this application did change for this current cycle, and I understand that the first sentence regarding a quote-unquote personal experience with UVA has led to some confusion. But note the very lawyerly turn of phrase in the second sentence. Such experiences might include, but are not limited to. So I promise we're not trying to test you here or test your future lawyer skills with this wording. There's actually a long story about why this wording changed. It's way too much information for this podcast, but suffice it to say, this wording was really meant to discourage people out there from just listing things on the website. Explaining why UVA Law is a great school. To us, we know, some of us went here, we work here, we know it's amazing, we know what our clinics are, we know what our faculty are, we know it's in Charlottesville, et cetera, et cetera. So we are hoping to elicit from the applicant why UVA makes sense for them personally. So for the person asking this question, she says she's an out-of-state student who's never had the opportunity to visit UVA but has a strong interest in attending. You do not need to be in state, certainly. You do not need to have ever visited. You don't need to know anyone or be related to anyone who went here. What you do need to do is have reflected for yourself and thought critically for yourself about why you personally are a good fit for UVA and why UVA is a good fit for you. I have seen this done very well by people who have no connection to the school whatsoever. So do your research on UVA, of course, but the statement has to tie back to you personally. What does your experience, how does that gel with what we have to offer? What kind of setting do you thrive in? What are you excited to contribute to? What are you excited to take advantage of, and why? Why does that make sense for you? So I really hope this helps people. We actually are trying to do the opposite. We're trying to say just having some connection to UVA actually is not enough. It's what experiences do you have leading into your law school experience? That's what we're really trying to get at. So I hope that this helps. Okay, so we have another question relating to addenda in general and the YUVA essay in particular. I'm telling you, we get questions about this all the time. So Chelsea, can you read that one?
I have a quick question regarding an addendum I am considering submitting. What is your stance on an applicant submitting an addendum after they have submitted their application? Specifically, I have deliberated and came to the conclusion I want to include a YUVA statement, as I now believe I have a strong enough connection to the school to warrant the statement.
Great question. Okay. As a general rule, applicants are always welcome to submit addenda after their application has been submitted, particularly if they have new information that they did not have at the time of the initial application. So they've discovered more interest in UVA, they have new grades, they got a promotion, anything like that. Now, I want to be super clear because of my answer earlier about the LSAT score. So in the context of submitting your application without your future LSAT score, my caution to that applicant was you're deliberately submitting your application without knowing one critical component. That is your choice, and you can do that. But by doing that, you're choosing to send us an additional email to hold your application until that score comes in, and also potentially submitting an addenda later on. So you are kind of putting yourself in the position where you do not have future information versus this question about addenda that at the time you submit your application, you think you have all the information, but later, new things come to light. So these are two different situations. I just want to make that clear. This person who wrote in particular says, I now believe I have a strong enough connection to the school to warrant the YUVA statement. So without knowing this individual situation, of course, it might be that he came to visit, he spent the day here, now he feels he has more of a personal experience to draw on for this essay. It could be that he just did more research into the school options, and in the course of that research, maybe he spoke to alumni or current students. Those conversations helped him realize he wants to be here. And we want you to do that. This is a more than appropriate reason to submit an addenda after your application is already in. The admission cycle is dynamic, you guys. So a lot happens. A lot of time passes from September 1st to the end of the waitlist season. We get it. Don't feel that you need to sit there in silence and not update us when things are happening. That is a perfectly fine thing to do in this scenario. Chelsea, by the way, I don't remember because I have seen many applications since your amazing application came in a couple years ago. Did you do a YUVA statement?
I was looking for this. I don't remember if I wrote a YUVA, but I do remember weaving components of YUVA into my application. And I think to your point, I really tried to kind of draw a through line between why I was a good fit for UVA and why I felt the community was a good fit for me, and highlighting different ways that I'd seen the community be the type of place that I want to contribute to during my time there. So I don't remember if I wrote this specific YUVA statement, but I definitely, like you said, thought critically about why I would be a good contributor to the community.
Right. And you don't have to submit that additional essay. You can weave it in. There are other indicators in the file, right? Like, what you were involved in school, what you choose to tell us about yourself. This is our business. We welcome people to tell us things, but sometimes we can glean other things from the file. So I think, whether you include it in your personal statement, whether it's through something in your resume, whether it's in the optional YUVA, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Okay. So next up, we have another question that came in via email. I just want to point out people are much more comfortable writing emails than voice memos. And I get that because having done a podcast now for 2 years, sometimes I mean, believe me, I don't like the sound of my own voice. So I do get it. But that's why we got, I think, so many written ones. And Chelsea, you're doing amazing. So do you want to read this next one?
Yes. This one says, I wanted to reach out with a quick question regarding reapplications. I applied last fall and was waitlisted and will be reapplying this cycle. I wanted to know if the admissions committee holds the application files from last year's applicants and compares the current application with that of their prior one. I've obtained new letters of recommendation, as well as rewritten my personal statement and other written responses, and was curious to see if my prior submission would be referenced to evaluate my growth over the past year.
Thank you so much for this question. First and foremost, I have to urge this person and any other reapplicants out there to please go back and listen to Season 5, Episode 3. We had one of our amazing 1Ls on the show. He himself was a reapplicant, and we spent a great deal of time discussing basically how reapplicants can improve their chances, how that whole process works, what we are looking for. So that's going to be your best resource. But just for the sake of sharing an answer here, yes, if you applied in the last 3 years, we will see your previous application. We will, of course, look at it in conjunction with your most recent application. We will look to see that you have made a new effort. We will look to see what has changed. But at the same time, you're still the same person. If it was just last year, we don't expect things to have changed dramatically. But somebody who really made no additional effort from 1 year to the next, that sort of tells us something about the reapplicant. But I will say this cycle, we've already seen a lot of great reapplicants who we have admitted because they have taken steps to improve their chances. So I wish this person the best of luck with that. So because I mentioned the episode we had on with a 1L who was a successful reapplicant, I think this is a great segue to a question we got from one of our admitted students. This one came into the Admissible Podcast email account. Chelsea?
This question reads, my name is Erin, and I'm a recently admitted student at UVA Law. Thank you so much for taking questions for your podcast to help us all learn more about UVA Law and the admissions process. My question is about federal clerkships. From my research, UVA Law has incredible federal clerkship numbers and a specific office dedicated to helping students obtain them too, which has been a big draw for me towards the school. I've also read that strong Federalist Society chapters can play a role in helping increase clerkship numbers at a school as well, which is why it's important for students unlikely to join FedSoc to do their research. I am curious to hear your take on this and how well UVA places students into clerkships across different judicial ideologies. Thank you.
This is a great question, Erin. And congratulations, by the way, on your admission to UVA Law. I'm so excited for you. So I would be remiss if I did not first and foremost direct you, Erin, and anyone else listening out there who's wondering about clerkships to the conversation I had with our Assistant Dean for Judicial Clerkships, Ruth Payne. That was Season 2, Episode 1 of this show. That was full of information about how the clerkship process works, how UVA Law advises our students, gets them into these prestigious clerkships. Dean Payne has been here for over 16 years doing this, and she really is the expert, much more so than I am. So I really encourage people who are interested in obtaining a clerkship to listen to that episode. So just a little brief, constitutional law refresher for everybody. Yes, judges, federal judges at the district level, the appellate level, and of course the Supreme Court level are appointed by the president and have to be confirmed by the Senate. So because we live in a two-party system for the most part, yes, in theory, judges are sort of extensions of political parties, and therefore you might conclude that judges are put into positions by presidents and senates who think that they will vote in a way that aligns with their ideology. That's, I think, a cynical way of looking at it, but I think also somewhat of a reality. So to answer your more kind of specific question, I think just to boil it down, this is really, how much does ideology or, my politics, how much is that going to play into my chances at getting a clerkship? First of all, I would sort of not focus on that. I would focus on your grades and your writing sample and your relationship to our faculty. Faculty are a huge part of this. They're going to write you amazing letters. They do a lot for our students. Of course, the clerkship advising process, but it's going to be your grades and your writing sample, less so than any student organizations that you're involved in. And I would also just remind everyone out there, look, the Supreme Court, if you are going to law school next year, this Supreme Court and its ideology is going to be the Supreme Court you are practicing under pretty much for your entire career. So just kind of come to terms with that and know that when you're a practicing attorney, you don't get to choose which judges you argue in front of. I mean, we could get into forum shopping and things like that, but for the most part, you are going to have to come across other attorneys and judges and so on with whom you disagree. That's obvious. So if you can keep an open mind and you can cast a wide net, and not everyone is going to get a Supreme Court clerkship, not everyone's going to get DC District Court, but our students and graduates get incredible clerkships all over the country. And again, casting a wide net, doing all the things that our clerkship office tells you to do, I think is going to be your best chance. And I'll just kind of end on this. It might really help sharpen your skills to help write opinions that maybe you don't agree with, right? That's a great exercise in sort of helping you hone your own arguments, helping you see both sides. So just to get back to the heart of Aaron's question, I wouldn't worry about whether being in FedSoc or any other student org is going to impact your chances. Lean on your faculty members, get your grades in shape, get your writing sample in order, and last but certainly not least, listen to whatever Dean Payne tells you to do. She's been doing this with incredible success for 16 years. So great question. Thank you, Aaron, and congratulations again. Okay. That was a long answer. I hope that helps. Here's another one that came in after last week's in-person Q&A. Chelsea?
Yes. This question asks, if you're 2 to 3 years out of school, how do you recommend we balance the type of recommenders for our letters of recommendation? Should we have a mix of academic and professional?
Great question. 2 to 3 years is kind of that, almost, I would say, gray area. I'm kind of just out of school, but I've also been working. And so, I think the short answer is think about what quote unquote work you want your recommenders to be doing for your application. If you were to submit your application without any recommendation letters, where would you perceive the need to sort of shore up your application or bolster your strengths or really highlight something that's not super clear yet? For example, if your GPA is on the lower end, maybe get that academic letter from somebody who really knows you and knows that you're more than just your grades or your transcript. Have them tell us, hey, this is a great student. They do care. They will be amazing in a law school classroom. On the flip side, are you somebody who, yes, you have some professional experience, but your grades are intact. You're not too worried about showing us that you're a really academic person. Well, show us that you're really have been thinking about law school and that you have these certain skills in a professional setting that would work to your advantage when it comes to being in front of the admissions committee. So really just think about your letters should be adding value. And so I would probably advise this person without knowing anything about their file to get a mix, maybe do 1 academic, 1 professional, 2 academic, 2 professional, whatever you want to do. But think about what they're going to be saying and how much your application is in need of those things. In most cases, a mix of both is going to help us to show that you're well-rounded, right? You're great in a classroom. You're also great in an office setting because that's what we're looking for. You're going to be in law school for 3 years. We want to know you're great in a classroom. We also are going to be putting you in front of employers pretty much right away. So we need to know that you're great in a professional setting too. That's why sort of all things being equal, if you have work experience, I think a mix is nice to see. Cherry on top is getting your recommenders to talk about what a great person you are, beyond just your academic prowess, beyond just your professionalism. What kind of person are you? This is what gets us excited to interview somebody. A lot of times I see 1 line or 2 lines from a letter of recommendation that is so compelling, I say, I need to meet this person. So really think about, at the end of the day, who's going to write you a compelling letter, whether it's academic or professional, and lean on those people. Okay, in putting this show together and thinking about questions, where do questions come from? They come to our inbox, they come to our front desk, they come to the weekly Q&As, they come from recruiting, all these different things. I learned that one of our student groups, actually, Chelsea, you mentioned it, the Black Law Students Association, or BALSA, holds a weekly Q&A session for prospective applicants. I just love that they do this. This is totally outside of admissions, totally, as we would say as a legal term, sua sponte, on their own. They totally took that on their own, which I hope goes to show how amazing our BALSA community is and just our student community in general. They're doing this on a Sunday, I think, just to help prospective applicants. I just love this so much. So I reached out to the membership chair to see, hey, what are some super common questions? Maybe I could get an answer on the show and really help a wider audience. So one of the questions that the membership chair told me, and I know we get this asked a lot, I actually want to put it to you, Chelsea, since you decided to attend UVA Law much more recently than I did. It's sort of the age-old question, why did you decide to attend UVA?
Yeah, I think during my admissions process and application process, I was just pulled to the place that felt like it wanted me to be there. And in my admissions process, I spoke with Roseanne, who's one of our wonderful admissions directors, and I just felt really embraced by her and that she really wanted me to be here. So that was a great sign. And then I visited, I think, that year over President's Day weekend, and I had a really wonderful visit and got to walk around North Grounds and meet with current students. And I think I even popped into the BALSA office that day and got to sit and just see people in their element, which was really cool. So through that experience, I just felt like, I think I belong here. And I think I could thrive here. And it was because the community was so strong. I knew that law school would be a really tough, challenging experience. And I wanted to be able to go through that experience with good people in a good environment. And I think I get both of those things here. And I'm just not sure I would have felt that way had I decided to go somewhere else. So I think fit was really big for me. And even now, figuring out employment, I think I've continued to prioritize fit because I think you can do your dream job or be in your dream scenario with the right people, but you can't be in it with the wrong people. And I think UVA has the right people and the best environment to do the hard things in.
I love hearing that so much. I think that's wonderful. I can't even really add to it. So I hope that helps. I think, a lot of people are wondering, and at some point you just have to come or you have to talk to people and you really have to know yourself and know where you're going to thrive. Okay, just a couple more things before we wrap up. Chelsea, as we have mentioned, you are one of our amazing student workers in the admissions office. So you are literally the front line to a lot of the questions that we get from prospective applicants and students, both on the phone. Our phone rings all the time. And we also have walk-ins that come to the office. So just off the top of your head, don't want to put you on the spot, but any questions that you fielded lately or that you seem to get all the time that you want to share?
I think thematically, sometimes I get quite a few questions that are based on information that we probably do have up on the website.
Yes.
So, maybe if people just spend a little bit more time combing through that resource, because the admissions team has really been thoughtful in curating all the information you need, whether it relates to your visit or things that we talked about like test scores or talking to a current student, just anything along those lines. It's covered on the website. So it just definitely encourage people to sit with that resource and make the most of it. I know that the application process is really, there's a lot of uncertainty involved in it, but to the extent that you're able to provide yourself some certainty by clinging to the resources that are out there and available, I would encourage that.
Thank you so much for putting that out there. I think, of course, we have student workers for a reason. We have a phone for a reason. We have walk-ins for a reason. We are happy to help people. We really genuinely are. And I think we will never deprioritize the in-person connection, the over-the-phone connection, talking to a real human. That is going to be our sort of brand and our approach forever. However, as a future lawyer, if you are thinking about applying to law school, you do need to engage in what I would call a little self-help before you reach out. Do your research. This is going to be a big part of what you do in law school. Our website is, quite frankly, top of the line. look at any other top law school's website. I'm sorry. Ours is just, it's helpful. It's well organized. We spent, like you said, a lot of time on it. We are trying to get as much information on there as possible. So try to, like you said, do your research there. And then, of course, if you have a question that you haven't been able to find, we're not going to hang up on you. We're going to happily answer your question. But it's really nice when people have kind of taken that first step. So I really, really appreciate you putting that out there. Okay, so I'm mindful of time. We could really make this a 12-hour episode if we wanted to. I think it could be an infinite episode. Nobody would listen. We have received so many questions. I tried to answer some of the most commonly asked ones, like the ones that I saw over and over again in the emails. So I just want to quickly thank everyone who took the time to submit a question. And I mentioned our Friday Q&A because some of them came from that group. By the time this episode comes out, it will be Friday, November 22nd, which will actually be the last day of the fall semester to attend an in-person Q&A at the law school. So if you are listening to this episode, you have not yet attended a Q&A, hopefully you can come to one in the spring. Those will start up again in late January. So just be sure to check our website for the dates that we are going to be running those Q&As. Those are always a great group. I'm always happy to do those on a weekly basis. So to close out the show, I want to come full circle, answer the question that we all heard at the top of the show.
What, when you're walking around UVA Law's campus, makes you most grateful to get to be there and call it home?
So Cambry, this question came from Cambry in Georgia. Thank you so much for submitting your question. I love it. And like I said, it's very on theme. At the risk of sounding cheesy, UVA Law is a home. It's my home, just like you said in your question. I feel filled with gratitude when I see the people who are walking around here who at one time or another were just an application. They were just an interview. They were just on a Zoom, and now they're here in 3D and they're happy and they have friends and they love their classes and they're getting amazing jobs. And it's basically seeing their potential from a year or two or three ago, come to life right in front of us. It's kind of that full circle moment. I also, a few days ago, I presented to our alumni council, which is a group of alums from, people graduated 40 years ago, people graduated 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And the enthusiasm that our alums have for the school and getting to sit in a room with them and share with them what's going on in admissions. And just, they are so excited to be back in Charlottesville. They're so excited to be together. They're so invested in the school. That always reminds me how special this place is that people take the time out of their extremely busy law practice and other incredible careers that they have going on to give back to UVA and to know what's happening here. So grateful for a lot of things. Thank you, Cambry, so much for that question. Chelsea, what are you grateful for?
I think kind of on the mirror end of your response, it's been really exciting for me, especially as a 2L now, to see my own personal and professional growth over the past year. I've been talking to some of my classmates and friends who are also 2Ls or 3Ls, and we're like, wow, 1L was a bit of a blur, but we grew so much. So many things happened to you in 18 months. You blink and next thing you know, you're headed off to whatever city or whatever market you're so excited about working in a practice group or area that you're so excited about working in. You have all these friends, people you didn't even know over a year ago who are now some of the closest people to you in your life. You develop these relationships with people in different departments, with different faculty, and you can reliably say that they'll probably be mentors for your entire career. So I just think it's the growth arc for me as a student, like you said, from going from an interviewee to an admit to my first day of classes, and now I'm nearly halfway through law school and I'm like, oh my gosh, things happen so quickly. But it's probably the most rewarding arc of progress I've had in my adult life, which I'd say is, something I'm really thankful for and feel very strongly about.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'm getting emotional on this show, a lot. I think it's because of that reason. It's whenever I have a student on and they're all these things, like I said, are coming to life. It's so gratifying, and I'm so excited for you. I don't want you to ever leave or graduate, but I know you're going to, and we still get you for the second half of your time here. So on that beautiful note that you shared, thank you, Chelsea, for coming on today. I took you away from the desk, so one of our other amazing student workers is answering the phones while we're here. I'm just so grateful for you and everything you do to help our office. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's been great.
This has been Admissible with me, Dean Natalie Blazer at the University of Virginia School of Law. My guest today was second-year law student Chelsea McKelvey, and a huge thanks to all of you out there who submitted your questions. The next episode of Admissible will be out soon. In the meantime, you can follow the show on Instagram at @AdmissiblePodcast. And as a reminder, Admissible is now on YouTube. You can check out all new episodes there, along with some vintage content we're sharing to help guide you through this application season. Thanks so much for listening, and please remember to rate the show wherever you listen to podcasts.